This story began in Europe in Western Germany. On February 13, 1977, a girl was born there. The original name of the girl remains unknown. When she was only 3 years old, she was adopted by her foster parents, Tommy and Sydney Thomas, who were a married couple from the United States. Immediately after completing the necessary documents, they named the girl Christina. The first years of the little girl's life were spent with her adoptive parents and younger sister in Walker County, located in the state of Alabama. After some time, all members of the family, as well as their numerous acquaintances, began to call the girl Tina. As a result, this name became her official one. Regarding Tina's foster parents, they were a good and financially stable family. A short time after adoption, they settled in an American city where childhood and youth were no different from that of any other girl from Alabama. However, she still had several distinctive features. Firstly, she was a proud representative of Southern Baptist branch of Protestant Christianity. Secondly, in childhood, she was diagnosed with a heart condition that was quite upsetting. For many years, she was treated with various medications, but none of them could stabilize her condition. Nevertheless, Tina managed to lead a normal lifestyle. After graduating from high school, she enrolled at the University of Alabama, located in the same Birmingham. There she successfully received higher education, but regarding her parents, they continued to look for options to solve her heart problem. In the end, they decided on a small operation that could help Tina improve the quality of her life. After some time after the operation, the girl felt much better and her life changed radically. Later, while at the campus of the already mentioned University of Alabama, Tina met a young man named David Gabriel Lawson, who was also often called Gabe. He was the son of David and Glenda Lawson, and just like Tina, he was born in 1977. Before enrolling at the University of Alabama, he graduated from Herbert Hoover High School in the city of Glendale. Friends and relatives of Lawson always spoke about him as a very pleasant, sociable and friendly person. In addition, they also noted his politeness and courtesy. Being also quite sociable, Tina attended various social events. Some of them were related to work or study, while others allowed her to spend time in a relaxed atmosphere. At the same time, she could often be seen at typical university parties. It was at one of these events that she met Gabe. Soon after that, the young people started dating, and in January 2001, they announced their official engagement. By that time, Tina was already working as a manager in a small chain of univermagas. In turn, Gabe worked part-time in the packaging department of his father's company. In addition, he had a special passion for scuba diving. Thanks to regular training and a large number of dives, he undoubtedly became an experienced diver and even received a rescue diver certificate. Regarding Tina, she didn't particularly enjoy this activity. However, out of love for her boyfriend, she often went with him to share his hobby. Of course, the girl's parents were concerned about her heart problem. However, the young man managed to assure them that all dives would take place under his close supervision and he would always be nearby to keep an eye on Tina. Overall, over time, the couple's relationship only strengthened. They looked happy and seemed to perfectly understand each other. And even despite their different schedules and hobbies, they tried to spend all the holidays together. Ultimately, in April 2003, right on Easter, Gabe hid a ring inside a chocolate egg and organized a search for this surprise. When Tina finally found it, he proposed and she agreed without a doubt. They quickly started preparing for their wedding, first choosing a venue, then creating a guest list, and dreaming about that day while planning their honeymoon. They had several good options, but ultimately decided to go to Australia for scuba diving. Not long before the trip, Tina received her diver's certificate. As the wedding approached, an event caught the attention of Tina's father, Tommy, who found it strange that Gabe asked his daughter to change her life insurance policy to make him the sole beneficiary. Nevertheless, Tommy dismissed his suspicions and told his daughter to focus on the wedding and honeymoon. He thought he would have time to review the insurance papers after they returned. On October 11, 2003, Tommy, like any loving father, walked his daughter down the aisle. Moments later, Tina and Gabe pledged to love each other for life until death do them part. At that time, both were only 26 years old. A few days later, the couple continued preparing for their honeymoon and packing. During this process, Gabe occasionally picked up a camera and take pictures of his wife. Once again, Tina appeared incredibly happy, but she could hardly imagine what awaited her ahead. The first stop for the newlyweds was Sydney. After spending a week there, they headed to Queensland, where the main events of their trip were to take place. They planned to visit the Great Barrier Reef off the northeastern coast of Queensland, often referred to as the largest living organism on Earth. Its area spans about 2,500 kilometers and consists of thousands of reefs and hundreds of islands. Moreover, countless fish, mollusks, starfish, turtles, dolphins, and of course sharks inhabit the reef. It was truly a unique and amazing place. Early on October 22, 2003, the newlyweds boarded a small light vessel named Spoil Sport. Its owners usually organized scuba divers' transportation to the Great Barrier Reef. It was also possible to dive around a passenger ship called SS Yungala, which was built in 1903 and sank in 1911, not far from the coast of Queensland. But let's not divert from the main story. By the time they were on Spoil Sport, Gabe had already completed 55 dives, while Tina had only done 5, all under more favorable conditions. The upcoming dives were undoubtedly a serious challenge for both, but especially for Tina. Moreover, there was a strong current at that moment, and the vessel's owners even required the newlyweds to sign papers releasing them from any responsibility for potential risks. Notably, the questionnaire also included a section on health and chronic illnesses that could affect their diving. However, Tina chose to keep her heart problems a secret. It's hard to say why she made such a decision. Perhaps she simply trusted Gabe and didn't want to ruin their plans. After all, he was an experienced diver. Anyway, up until a certain point, their time on board went smoothly. The couple enjoyed the views and incredible marine landscapes. They were literally amazed by the local beauty and the diverse wildlife surrounding them. Soon it was time for their first dive. It was announced that a certified instructor would accompany the newlyweds for safety reasons. Gabe was somewhat irritated by this and mentioned again that he was an experienced and certified diver himself. Ultimately, the crew checked Gabe's documents and confirmed his impressive number of dives, which allowed the couple to dive independently. The experienced diver assigned to accompany them was not troubled by the fact that Tina only had 5 dives. When they were in the water of the first time, the couple looked at each other, took each other's hands and set off. However, just a couple of minutes later, something went wrong. Gabe encountered some issues with his equipment and immediately signaled to Tina that they should return to the surface. It was found that his depth gauge was malfunctioning. Around 10:30 a.m., after fixing the instrument, they were back in the water. Moments before, Gabe attached several bags of extra weight to Tina's belt, explaining that it would help her reach the necessary depth to explore the sunken ship. Then they, as before, looked at each other, held hands, and started their second dive, which would change their lives. As soon as they descended to 15 meters, Tina gave a thumbs up, signaling everything was fine. Suddenly, it seemed something went wrong with her equipment and she lost consciousness. While Gabe attempted to surface, his wife sank deeper and deeper. When he returned to the boat, he recounted that the current was much stronger than they had expected, causing Tina to panic. He noticed the worry on her face and reached out to her, but instead of grabbing his hand, she accidentally hit him in the head, knocking off his mask and oxygen regulator. By the time he adjusted his gear, Tina was reportedly far away. He claimed he initially swam after her but soon had to abandon the attempt and return to the surface for help. At that point he mentioned he couldn't dive that deep due to ear issues. Hearing Gabe's account, diving instructor Wade Singleton immediately dove in. Reports indicate he descended over 30 meters and within 10 minutes he managed to bring Tina back to the surface. For the next 40 minutes the crew tried to revive her, but their efforts were in vain. Experienced divers nearby on the day of Tina's death noted two crucial points. First, Tina was carrying about 20 kilograms of extra weight, while only 8 kilograms would have been sufficient for a smooth dive. Second, when she was lifted to the surface, her equipment was in perfect working order, and there was still a sufficient amount of oxygen in the tank. These facts raised significant questions. Another interesting detail was that several divers had seen Gabe hugging his wife underwater for a while before he shot up to the surface as she began sinking. Notably, one of these divers accidentally captured a photo of Tina lying face up on the bottom during this time. However, this image became known only weeks after her death. That evening, the news of Tina's death reached her parents, but it was not from Gabe, but rather from his father, David. The day after the incident, forensic expert Professor David Williams conducted the first autopsy on the young woman's body. He discovered clear signs of air embolism and concluded that Tina's cause of death was drowning. Consequently, coroners who investigate deaths in Anglophone legal systems focused on the accidental death theory. However, everything changed due to Gabe's implausible and contradictory statements. Initially, he willingly cooperated with Australian authorities, providing testimony about his wife's death. But he soon left Australia, refusing to return when asked, stating that he would only communicate through his lawyers. This behavior may have stemmed from news that coroners were examining his dive computer, which recorded depth, oxygen consumption, and other data. After a while, Australian authorities presented evidence that Gabe's account contradicted the data from his dive computer. The coroners then proposed their version of events, suggesting Gabe might have restricted his wife's oxygen supply until she lost consciousness, then resumed it before letting her sink while he surfaced to call for help. To confirm or refute this theory, experts conducted a detailed reconstruction of the events under similar conditions, considering several scenarios. They concluded that the most plausible version was the one that eventually presented. Meanwhile, Tina's father Thomas, not believing in the accidental death theory, launched a media campaign claiming Gabe was responsible. Yet, the key facts related to the media and Gabe took time to uncover. Despite the victim's family's efforts and Australia's authorities, the investigation made little progress for the first 6 years. In March 2005, Gabe filed a lawsuit in the Jefferson County District Court, Alabama, seeking compensation for the cancelled trip and demanding nearly $40,000 from the insurance company for his wife's death. He also sought compensation for medical expenses, phone calls, travel, and emotional distress. However, in May 2008, Gabe decided to withdraw the lawsuit, seeing it as contradictory in light of the ongoing investigation, and his Australian lawyers insisted it wasn't in his best interest. On June 19, 2008, Gabe was officially charged with his wife's murder. The indictment stated he intentionally killed his wife on October 22, 2003 by restricting her oxygen supply and preventing her from surfacing. Only in May 2009, after considerable resistance to extradition laws, Gabe voluntarily arrived in Australia from the United States to stand trial. He pleaded not guilty to intentional murder but accepted responsibility for involuntary manslaughter. Ultimately, the judge sentenced him to 1 year in prison and 3.5 years probation. This sentence was seen as a significant insult to Tina's family, especially her father. Thomas even referred to the Australian justice system as a sham, insisting Gabe intentionally killed his daughter for her insurance money. He repeatedly mentioned that he found it suspicious that just a few days before the wedding, Gabe convinced Tina to change her insurance policy and make him the primary beneficiary in case of her death. Making an exception for the father of the deceased, the judge decided to explain the main reasons behind the lenient sentence. Firstly, he noted that Gabe's guilt had not been proven. Secondly, he believed the defendant continued to cooperate with authorities and voluntarily returned to Australia to face justice. Finally, the judge felt that Gabe loved his wife and sincerely mourned her loss. Were these arguments sufficient for Tina's father? It's hard to say, but in any case, his daughter could not be brought back. As for Gabe, despite admitting guilt and receiving a mild sentence, he still seized the opportunity to appeal and not wanting to end up in prison. The coroner's representatives did the same, but they sought a different outcome, arguing that the real sentence for David Gabriel Lawson should be increased to 2.5 years. The decision on these appeals was reviewed on September 18, 2009. Ultimately, with the agreement of 2 out of 3 appellate judges, Gabe's sentence was increased to 18 months of imprisonment. In August 2010, it was announced that Gabe would be released from Australian prison and deported to the United States, where new charges related to the same case were expected to be filed against him. In early November 2010, Lawson was indeed released from prison and transferred to an immigration detention center. It then became clear that his deportation would be delayed due to Australian authorities requesting written assurance from the United States Attorney General that Gabe would not face the death penalty even if convicted of murder. According to international law, Australia simply could not deport a person who might face capital punishment. Nonetheless, at the end of November that same year, Lawson was deported and immediately arrested. Following that, prosecutors from Alabama charged Gabe with murder and kidnapping, asserting that they had found evidence that he had premeditated the crime and had tricked the victim into going to Australia under the guise of a honeymoon. In mid-December 2010, Lawson appeared in court again and requested bail. The district court was filled with friends and family of Tina, as well as numerous representatives from the Australian and American media. After an hour-long hearing, the defendant was released on $100,000 bail, but was required to wear an electronic bracelet, prohibited from leaving Alabama, and ordered to surrender his passport. The next stage of the trial took place in February 2012, at which point a judge from Alabama named Tom Neal acquitted David Gabriel Lawson due to insufficient evidence. According to him, the prosecution had almost no substantial evidence that the defendant had any motive for committing the crime. This case inspired writers and filmmakers all over the world, and the media also took an interest. Many international outlets filled their pages with stories about the strange circumstances surrounding Tina's death. A huge thank you for watching. Our video has come to an end. If you want to see more interesting content, subscribe to our channel and press the bell to not miss the new release.